Okay, final big topic, I think.
Yes.
How do you feel about the politicization of movies? Macro, micro, and then you can speak. So macro-wise, obviously talking about the politicization of anything is kind of silly because, like you said, what is art? Well, what is politics? Everything is kind of political, whether you're bucking a social norm or reinforcing it. You're always doing something in some cultural context. It seems like if I point to, as an example I use a lot, if I look at like women characters in films, it feels like in the past there have been movies that have women leads who do a really good job at that, but it felt like it wasn't the explicit goal of the director or the artists to make that like a political statement. They just happened to be there. So like Sigourney Weaver as Ripley in Alien, or Kill Bill, and like these are like good examples of lead females who are just in awesome movies doing awesome things. And then you've got other movies where it feels a little bit more intentional. So whatever the woman is that the Quartering hates in Captain Marvel, he's made like 50 million, 50 million videos about her. Or the like Star Wars, the new trilogy or whatever with that female lead, where it feels like a little bit more of a political statement. So you've got movies that feel like they're trying to make stronger political statements in our current culture. And then you've got now this kind of like YouTube movie reviewer culture that's very politically oriented, where there are certain movies that I watch and I could tell just because there's like a gay character or just because there's a type of character, I know there's someone on YouTube that's gonna be really mad about it. What do you think about that environment in general?
It's a funny new environment that we're in, and I find it kind of amusing that like a lot of the people that scream the loudest about not wanting politics in their films are the ones injecting like making them explicitly political with how they're engaging with it, especially with the amount of these channels that make 10 videos in a row about a movie that's not even out yet, but just like the person who directed like a lesbian woman, and she said that she liked Frozen because there wasn't like a male love story. It's like, wait, that's not blah, 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 right? And then you search for like a trailer of like one of these new, it's always like Star Wars and Marvel, and it seems like most of the films that they experience and their entire language of how they view film is only through the lens of Star Wars and Marvel, which is also another frustrating thing because, maybe not all of them, but definitely some of them, they have this sort of mantra of like, oh, movies are bad now, when in reality also there's a bit of like, a perception bias because films from the past, there was if you look on Wikipedia and you just look at the entire list of movies released within the year, like notable movies released within the year, go to like 1996, right? You'll find a bunch of shit that was just trash, forgotten, cynical, lazily made, no personality, no soul. But we remember the ones that are special. And just like the films in this generation, we remember the ones that are special. We remember the films that connect with people in ways that break the norms, or ways that might even be reinforcing some norms, but do something that people really, really jive with. So in the sense of, I guess, these characters kind of existing, I find it amusing that when I search for like a new Star Wars or Marvel thing, oftentimes now first result is Ben Shapiro's
take
response
on the Barbie
to it.
movie, like
and
hour and a half, and then critical
and then I look at it
and
and
the
I'm
quartering,
like, and I'm like, you didn't even really talk about the trailer. You took an article from Pink News where the whole focus of that LGBT website was to say, here's all the people involved on this show that are LGBT. And it's like 6 people out of hundreds that are working on it. He reads that article and then uses that and presents this to his audience. And the implication is like, this is going to be the gayest show ever. And they're trying to turn your kids gay and trans, right? Everybody, he's reading an article, and it would seem like if you just saw his content and the same people in his sort of ecosystem commenting on these things, you'd get an entirely different impression about exactly what is happening in the industry, or exactly or how big of an issue these things are, when it's like, okay, well, one Star Wars show out of how many are there? 8,000 or whatever. It's like, okay, you have a lesbian woman directing it. There's a trans person in it. There's a non-binary person in it. They maybe get like 10 seconds of screen time. We have no idea. Maybe one of them's a main character. Is that really like a thing to be making like 10 videos about before it's out, and acting and really drumming up your audience and getting everybody kind of in this weird sort of like, they're after you and they're after your kids sort of mentality? I think that's a little historically harmful, maybe not a great sort of vibe for people to be in, especially when there's a lot of like crazy impressionable people that these people kind of know are probably in their audience too. I don't think it's doing a lot of good, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And there's a lot of these films that wind up sucking anyway. You know, you wouldn't catch me being like, oh, whatever what most of these shows that they take issue with are just shows anyway and movies. But not because there's a trans person in it, and not because there's a woman in it. It's because they're creatively bankrupt, and the exact same ideas I was talking about earlier, where they have no faith in artists and they have faith in IPs. That's exactly what they're doing. That's why all of these shows that they're doing this with are Marvel and Star Wars, is because historically they can look at certain demographics. They can look at the fact that there is an appetite to want to see more women in movies. There is an appetite for a certain portion of the crowd to want to see more people of color in movies. There's some appetite that exists to want to see representation of trans people or non-binary. That's not happening to every show. It's happening to a small fraction of shows, some of those being pre-existing IPs of big names that, like, I guess a lot of people are very emotionally attached to in a nostalgic way. But the Barbie movie was the highest grossing film of last year. It beat the Mario movie. That was like the most feminist woke shit ever. And so obviously there's an appetite for it. But what the Barbie movie did well is they trusted in actual artists like Noah Baumbach, like Greta Gerwig, right? These two that created this film from their own ideas and were allowed to essentially do what they wanted with, I'm sure, some notes, but not necessarily just trying to recreate the success of like, let's do Star Wars, but it's a woman, or let's do Marvel, but it's a girl power movie. It's the creative bankruptcy that is causing these issues, not the fact that there's any sort of representation.
I think that's what drives me the craziest when it comes to like the very political analyses of really of anything. It can be it can even be of political things when people have their particular lens they look through. But yeah, like if you make a Ghostbusters movie with an all-male cast and the movie kind of isn't that great, like Ghostbusters 2, like nobody would ever say, well, they fucked up because it was an all-male cast. But then if you make like the all-female Ghostbusters and you're like, well, this movie wasn't good, it's not because they didn't have good ideas or because it was, you know, artistically bankrupt. It's because, well, it was because they picked women. And it's like, would men starring in that movie have made it any better? Like, is that really what we're running with? Is super frustrating.
I think I would like to see a world where people are more self-conscious of their own biases in a way where I don't think the average person realizes just how much more they'll notice something that is not something that they're already used to. Because that is essentially a lot of criticism, and a lot of conservative criticism, is that something is kind of challenging an existing norm or challenging an existing tradition. And so, you know, is it as much of a political statement for there to be a gay kiss as a straight kiss? It depends on who you ask. If we had if society was entirely differently up until this point and we were in a different culture where there wasn't like a stigma directly associated with one over the other, then it would be perceived less politically. So I don't know. It's like, maybe it's just an issue of just trying to look at things like, you know, there's no true objectivity, but attemptedly more objective, or try to look past your own biases, or try to maybe think like, am I upset about this because it's different, or is it being political because it's different? Or is there something more deep-rooted? Is there like an actual reason towards why I should be feeling upset about this film? Is it about the artistry? Like, I think that's the most important factor, is the artistry. And that seems to often get ignored by a lot of these channels in this particular ecosystem that have made things way more political from their own content than the things that they criticize.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And then I wonder sometimes, like, maybe people are making political movies like this, if they are doing it spitefully or whatever, literally just because of your reaction to it.
Like, no, because it's free promotion now.
Yeah,
it's free promotion now.
And then even like some of the questions that were involved in this, like why did this character have to be gay? And it's like,
why they have to be straight? I don't know. Like,
why is anybody gay?
Depends on the
it's just like
depends on the writer, and it depends on, you know, what they're trying to do. If you don't connect with that sort of thing, like, no one's forcing you to watch the film.
Yeah. Or
and there's like, it's not like there's a shortage of like
straight
heteronormative straight white characters in huge IPs. It's not like you can't find that, right? So
do you feel similarly for people that read cultural commentary, political themes, and everything. I'm reminded of. I'm really bringing this question up about Dune 2. A lot of people read Dune 2 as like I say a lot of people, but there's really just one person from the Jurassic Park who made a tweet about this. It's like a love letter to the Palestinians or whatever. I saw a lot of people trying to take like Star Wars and be like, you guys really think that, the rebels, that would represent America? Like this is blah, blah, blah. Do you feel like movies and the way people view them now is more political than I guess you felt like movies were like 20 or 30 years ago? Or
I mean,
do you think it's always been like about that?
Well, here's the thing is anything you view on fucking Twitter is going to be that way, right? I think it's the lens and the format that we view conversations through entirely. Like in that sense, it's not just films. It's literally everything has been hyper politicized. So I don't think that's a statement necessarily about the film industry or necessarily even film viewers. I think that's more a statement about Twitter and just internet brain people. And sure, there is room for some commentary about how you relate to a film politically, even if Dune is a story that was made, I don't remember what year the original book came out. It was pre-80s anyway, or maybe in the 80s. But, even if you're attaching that onto current day political events, there's nothing wrong with that. But I guess I would be careful before like attributing intent to the artists in that way. I guess if you're just trying to be accurate. But there's no harm in like I guess having that connection with it if that's the type of way you want to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.